Best of r/Tales from Tech Support episode 40. As everyone is interested in hearing how I got a PTSD and a panic disorder from my employer, I'll continue my tales from Bizarro World. So, I've got my colorful password list of the ones that weren't set to factory default, and my equipment's IP addresses. I'm all ready to start configuring the enterprise monitoring and alert software. Then I look down and fear starts to roll over me. The tabs at the bottom of the sheet were labeled Windows, VMware, TCP/IP router, fiber channel router, and even a few as 400 servers. I'm sure they were thrown in just for luck. As I flip through the tabs, I realize it's not just a list of my equipment that they threw together for the Windows guys who were trying to run my equipment before I arrived. It was a master server list with the resolvable names and IPs of all of the servers. It also included a list of ports, applications, application versions, and finally passwords. That's right, every password for every server and every application in the enterprise with root level access. At this point I feel sick. I take a coffee break and walk down to get a mocha choca bullshit latte and weep in it before returning to work. Now I've got to figure out if I want to help them out, or wipe a multinational corporation off the face of the earth before lunchtime. Next up, staff meeting. I bring up these problems at our weekly senior level staff meeting, and everyone in the meeting seems okay with what I'm telling them. They should be freaking the fuck out, but they're not. Everyone is just staring at me like I'm growing horns out of my skull. Their looks were similar to a dog hearing a high-pitched noise. It was kind of a confused head tilt thing, like the dog is aware of something but can't quite figure out the noise they're hearing. In this case it was me giving a security lecture. The sage CIO just kept nodding like they had a clue what I was saying, but I could see the CIO had absolutely clue why I was bringing any of this up. Again, ever wise, the CIO asked, "What do you want to do about this?" I told the room, "We need to password protect this file and store it in an encrypted vault, as opposed to the IT drive share that everyone working with the designation IT in their title had access to." I continued saying, "In reality we need to destroy this file." This brought a chorus of groans from the room, followed by chants of "How are we going to do our work with a password protected password file?" A few senior level admins asked, "Can't we just print out some hard copies for our desks and then destroy the file on the server?" Another helpful suggestion was, "What if we separate the application logins from the hardware logins on the share?" My brain is spinning by this point. Did he just suggest splitting the master password file into two files and then keeping them both in the same folder with no password protection on either file? Yes, he did. The complaining continued about how we couldn't move or wipe out the server name /password /equipment /application /IP/port XLS file. The Windows and VMware admins groaned, "How are we going to get any work done if the file is gone?" My thought was to pound my fists on the conference room table and yell, "I don't know, maybe like every other fucking corporation out there?" But I held that voice in my inside angry place and bit my tongue. With the room missing the point so badly, I chose to retreat into a corner for the rest of the meeting. As I had already warned the senior level staff and the CIO of the problem, I had done my due diligence that would be followed up with a warning email. For the rest of the meeting I tried to not ruffle any more feathers. I was praying in the meeting that someone else with less ethics doesn't wipe out the company by the end of the day. My brain reverted to thoughts of my paycheck and the stack of bills I had just incurred moving my family to a new state. Then my thoughts shifted to an inspirational quote by Bob and Doug McKenzie, which was $10 is $10. With that in mind, I held it all in and took notes on what madness was occurring in the rest of the enterprise that I may have to deal with later. Next up for me was reconciling the master hardware list with a visual inspection of the hardware and matching the serial numbers of the devices I was in charge of. That led me to my next problem: data center access. Security hadn't done a full background check on me, so my access card was not given data center level floor access. The fact I could wipe the company from a lounge chair in Tahiti made no difference to physical corporate security. Physical access would not be granted until the background checks had come back. Stymied, I asked who had DC access that could escort me. I was finally able to borrow a level 1 desktop technician to escort me into the DC. I was starting to feel a bit optimistic. I had access to all of my systems, and everything else in the company. I was starting to get performance results back from the equipment, and the CIO seemed impressed with my emphatic discussion style in meetings. So, I was actually nurturing a small seed of hope, not for the rest of the corporation, but just my equipment. The first horror was when we entered the data center was the temperature. It was hot. Not like warm, it was hot. I checked the thermostat on the wall and we were running well above 74 degrees. I asked the desktop guy, is it always this hot in here? And he said every time I've been in here it's been this hot. He said that he had been asked to assist in rack mounting some servers. Then he said the heat was a little uncomfortable to work in. Panicking again. Panicking again. Then he threw out this nugget: be glad it's morning, it gets hotter in the afternoon. I'm full on freak the fuck out at this point. Hotter in the afternoon. I put a reminder in my phone to check that I have in fact placed temperature as a Sev1 alert on my monitoring server. With no other choice I moved on to why I was there. I had some incredibly old hardware units that quite frankly scared me. These things were ancient and were still in production. Not only were they in production, but every user in the company accessed them multiple if not hundreds of times a day. I was a bit relieved that I only had 2 of them to worry about. When I went to match serial numbers and map network ports, the start of my PTSD began. I counted not 1 or 2, but 8 production boxes that no one knew about. I am full on freaking the fuck out now. The desktop support guy actually asked me, are you okay? It looks like you're hyperventilating. No, I was not fucking okay. I start looking for warning lights and call home cables on these things pronto. It's been a while since this happened, but I think I found 3 or 5 failed drives on my initial inspection. There weren't any call home phone cables plugged into the back of the boxes. I took a breath and comforted myself saying it's okay. They are production Ethernet cables running out the back of the box that were active. And most likely these were configured for phone home over the production network with a firewall hole for the OEM vendor, maybe, or something. Tired of architecting the stupidest call home in the history of servers, I decided to just copy the serials. Who am I kidding? I snapped photos of the serials with my cell phone. That's right, I took photos of a DC with my cell phone. But seriously, after reading everything above, do you really think anyone was on top of this to stop me? So, I stopped the site assessment and returned to my desk to ask the OEM, where the hell are you? I've got failed disks. Where is the fucking CE and why isn't he here now? So, I call the OEM, whose enterprise support lines has you call the consumer products line and sit in voicemail jail until you hear the right option to press. I didn't know this, and when I dialed in I was met with thank you for calling OEM Corp. Press 1 for consumer printer support. Press 2 for consumer camera support. Press 3 for Impreza laptop support. Press 4 for conjunctivitis laptop support until we finally hit press 8 if your data center is on fucking fire support. When I got through, I read off the serials and tried to find out why they didn't call home. That's when OEM Corp told me I need to transfer you to sales for your account. I'm saying, what? Sales? WTF. When my salesperson for OEM Corp came on the line, I was like, it's so nice to meet our account rep. You should take me and my team out to a very expensive lunch next week. With that out of the way, I hit her with the question, are my boxes calling home, and if they aren't, why aren't you sending out a CE to see why? I followed this up with, when will a CE be here to fix these drives before a few thousand users lose data? She had me read off the serials off to her and then she said Yep, I wondered when someone would call about this. They haven't had a maintenance contract with us on about 3 years. We thought they decommed it and it was sitting in a closet somewhere. Then she asked, are you crying? I think I hear you crying. Thank you. Next. Haven't been here in a while, but this just happened. I work consulting for a managing software, SAP like, and work with lots of chains. One of my most common complaints is inventory transfers not working, so I get a ticket about one movement not reaching the correct destination. They said the items arrived at location 10 and the system transfer was not there. I check the number and see it's pointing to location 3. Check location 3 and is there waiting approval. So I tell them this and they said it's not right and produce a copy of the delivery papers, clearly stating it was going to location 3, with the 3 crossed over with a pen and send instead to location 10 scribbled next to it. Still trying to make them understand why it didn't work. Thank you. Next. TL. Doctor, sometimes you have the power. 23 years ago. Warning. This is a slightly more technical tale than usual. If any pointers/explanations are needed, let me know. $me. Obvious. $boss. Taking credits. $MFG rep. Seemed unwilling to help. Cooperative after reproducing the issue at hand. $mobo. Specific model of desktop motherboard for $MFG. $boss. Hi $me. We are getting messages from our clients that some machines with $mobo are not working properly. $me. What seems to be the problem? $boss. Graphics drivers are not willing to load. $me. That is odd. So far that wasn't an issue. $boss. Can you look into this? They are starting to complain. We cannot have this. $me. I'll see what I can find. I build a standard machine with $mobo. Install OS. Install drivers. No problems. Odd but as expected because client lie, right? Not so this time. I call the client and ask them what exactly is in their systems. They have added a quite powerful PCI graphics card of a certain model because their systems are used for CAD/CAM. Fortunately, we have one of those cards in stock. I add said graphics card to the system, install drivers, and after a restart I'm greeted by standard VGA low resolution. OS does this if it cannot load any drivers. Right, it is an actual issue. I run some diagnostics to try and pinpoint the issue. I cannot see anything wrong until I check what IRQ goes where. The graphics card is not getting an IRQ. That explains why the drivers aren't loading properly. I'm performing a BIOS. I reset the BIOS to defaults to clear out any eventualities. Disable basically every unboot device to make sure there are ample IRQs available. No dice. No IRQ given to the graphics card. I check the slots one by one with other PCI cards, no matter how weird or exotic. Network, SCSI, USB, serial/parallel, audio, measuring cards. They all get an IRQ assigned. I check the graphics card in another system with a different motherboard. IRQ is assigned. Drivers are working. I try another model graphics card in $mobo. No IRQ. Okay. Time to contact the manufacturer of $mobo as I have excluded every other option. Ring. $MFG rep. Hello. This is $MFG customer service. What can I do for you today? $me. We seem to have an issue with $mobo. It is not working properly with add-in graphics cards that require an IRQ. $MFG rep. You are the first to report this. Are you sure you checked if the card is okay? Did you reset the BIOS to defaults? Did you make sure you have available IRQs? I report what I have done so far and my findings. $MFG rep. There is not much I can do at the moment. Please send in a support request. We will get back to you. 3 days later. There's a third-party BIOS company that has a beta BIOS available for $mobo. It is basically in its infancy. 90% is working but some key issues prevent it from being released. I test said BIOS on $mobo. Graphics card gets an IRQ. Ring. $MFG rep. Hello. This is $MFG customer service. What can I do for you today? $me. Hi $MFG rep. We have tried a third-party BIOS that is still in beta. With that we did get an IRQ for the graphics card. Could you please check into this? We don't feel comfortable releasing this BIOS to our clients. $MFG rep. I cannot comment on this matter for now. $me. So far, we have been using only your boards. Do you want us to start looking for a different brand? $MFG rep. I cannot comment on this matter for now. 1 week later. Ring. $MFG rep. We have replicated your findings and we are going to release a new BIOS soon. Would you like to test it before we release it to the public? $me. By all means, yes, I'd love to. Update BIOS on original system with $mobo. Graphics card gets IRQ and functions normally. $me. $boss. The manufacturer is releasing an update that will fix the problem. $boss. Good. I will tell the clients then. I hear him make several phone calls blabbering like he personally debugged the BIOS and hacked it into working. Sigh. Thank you. Next. Years ago, I had a side gig doing tech support for a friend of a friend's business. It was nothing official, like, really laid back. They used the same computer for business and family fun, so sometimes I'd have to undo the damage their 3-4-year-old accomplished while playing educational games. Finally got rid of that issue by setting up an old beta computer solely for the kids. At some point, they wanted a strictly for business laptop, so I arranged a Craigslist deal with a dual-core i3. Nope, wrong, Pentium T4300/4GB RAM/250GB HDD for cheap. Original owner thought it was broken and I brought along some boot Dianagus discs to make sure it was just a software issue. It checked out, so I bought it/wiped the drive and set it up for their shop. A few days, or weeks, this is far in the past, later, I was told that the mouse stopped working on the laptop I procured for them. Oh shit, it's on my way home. I'll stop by after work and see what the problem is. I vetted this used laptop, so I feel responsible for it. Within a couple minutes of arriving and settling down in front of the workstation, I pressed the trackpad on/off button and the problem was fixed. Turns out, the Wi-Fi and trackpad enable/disable buttons were next to the power button and they managed to misplace their finger while putting the laptop to sleep. They had me join in on a home-cooked dinner with them and gave me a couple beers. We called it even/all good. It was on my way home anyways. Edit. After a quick search, I think it was an Acer 5732. Here's a pic of the power/Wi-Fi/trackpad button combo. Thank you. Next. During my first stint at this warehouse, I oversaw the networking side of installing 2 robots that essentially place product into designated bins. For each bin there is a red, yellow, and green light that tells the associate its status and what to do with the bin. The $ vendor has 2 employees on site at all times to attend to these robots. This story takes place on day 2 of my second stint, 18 months later. $tech, hey, skis rule. I've got $manager here saying the robots are down. She's rebooted the computer but the lights still don't turn on. $me. Sounds like a $vendor issue. Has she contacted them? $tech. I told her to, but no. She's saying it's definitely an IT issue and to go get $other engineer. Okay, she's wrong, but let's walk out there and see what's up. $me. Hey, $manager. What seems to be the issue here? $manager. I was expecting $other engineer. Are you going to know how to fix this? $me. Yeah, and he's out today. $manager. Okay, well the machine froze so we rebooted the computer and now the lights don't work. $me. That's because the machine requires a reboot when the computer reboots. $vendor will have to do that as $tech mentioned earlier. $manager. I already told you it's an IT issue, not a $vendor issue. I've dealt with this before. Just let me know when it's done. She then walks off into the void as I remind her to submit a ticket for tracking and is not seen again. $tech and myself immediately walk the excruciating 25 feet over to the $vendor workspace. $me. Hey, Robot 1's computer was rebooted. No lights on the machine. $vendor. Alright, let me grab my key. We walk back to the machine. He opens the access panel and reboots it. All lights turn on and all is good. I create a ticket on $manager's behalf because we all know it will never come. Thank you. Next. Years ago I worked in tech support for a large financial institution, and my colleague took a phone call from an end user who was struggling to input a wire transfer for her customer. His encounter with the user was so epic, my colleague knew instantly that no one would believe it actually happened, so he printed out his submitted call record as proof of the conversation. I kept a copy of it for years, and would glance at it every once in a while if I needed a good laugh. Here is a rough summary of the conversation. Colleague, this is tech support. How can I help you? User, yeah, my customer is doing a wire transfer to New Mexico and I'm having trouble entering it into the system. Colleague, what trouble are you having? User, I'm choosing the option for international, but when I type New Mexico as the location, an error tells me I have to choose domestic for the type of transfer. Colleague, okay, so what's the issue? User, it's to New Mexico. Why is it telling me to choose domestic? Colleague, thinks for a second. Wait, what? You're sending it to New Mexico? User, yes. Colleague, okay. User, pause, so are you going to help me? Colleague, I'm not sure what your issue is, mom. You're sending it to New Mexico, so that would be a domestic wire transfer. User, but it's New Mexico. Colleague, yes. New Mexico. User, New Mexico, sir. Mexico isn't in the United States. Colleague, mom, New Mexico is one of the 50 states. If you're sending the wire to Mexico, you can select international, but if it's one of the 50 states, which New Mexico is, then you need to select domestic. User, still not understanding. I don't understand why you don't understand what I'm saying. It's New Mexico. Colleague, yes, New Mexico. If you want to help your customer, then please select domestic, and it should let you finish that wire transfer. Eventually the girl relented and submitted the wire transfer as she was instructed. It's still not clear to my colleague whether she realized her mistake, or if she just did what she was told so her customer wouldn't get angry with the amount of time this was taking. Y'all, I can't help but wonder what was going through the mind of that customer, watching this girl, who was from Texas, argue with tech support that a state right next door to her was a foreign country. I question the quality of her geography classes in high school. Thank you. Next. Copier tech here. I was called out to assist a customer with changing her toner, as she couldn't figure out how. I knew this was a relatively new customer, and I had done the install, so I also knew that she was a sweet little older lady, so I was happy to go. I arrived and was greeted with the usual "oh thank goodness, I'm so happy you are here." I love those greetings. So anyway, I follow her to her office to get to the small Kyocera M2535 desktop copier, and there she stands, holding two items. She says, "I'm so sorry to have called you for something so silly, but I cannot figure out where these inks go." Bless her heart. I said, "Well, those are laptop batteries, so I'm sure glad you waited for me, lol. Poor thing." She said, "Well, see, this is why I'm so glad to have you." She laughed and we found the toner and I changed it for her. I thought we were done. Then she asks, "But where does the ink go?"